So I'm going to finish up discussing astro-theology so that you stop taking people like Santos Bonacci seriously and Jordan Maxwell seriously when they are discussing astro-theology. And you can start seeing through what they are saying. So as everybody should know, it takes 1 year for our planet to revolve completely around the sun. Each revolution of our Earth around the sun is 1 year. And as our planet revolves completely around the sun, this affects the seasons. So the seasons change as our planet revolves around the sun. So as everyone should know, the Earth rotates on its axis once every 24 hours, which is 1 day. As you can see, the Earth is tilted 23.5 degrees. Because the Earth is tilted, it sometimes appears to tilt toward the sun. And at other times, it appears to tilt away from the sun. So you can see with this graphic, this is our Earth appearing to tilt back away from the sun. And here it is, appearing to tilt forward toward the sun. Here it appears to tilt back away from the sun. And here it is appearing to tilt forward toward the sun. So the equator divides the Earth into 2 hemispheres, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, when the Earth appears to tilt forward toward the sun, it is spring and summer. And when the Earth appears to tilt back away from the sun, it is fall and winter. So here it is, appearing to tilt forward toward the sun when it is spring and summer. And here it is, appearing to tilt back away from the sun when it is fall and winter. So the seasons change as our planet revolves around the sun. So as we go through the year, the sun appears to rise at different heights in the sky. If you were to carefully monitor the sky, you would find that the sun appears to enter and set in the sky in different positions throughout the year. So as we go through the year, the sun appears to rise at different heights in the sky. On December the 21st, you will see the sun only rise a little ways in the sky. It makes a small arc and then begins to set again. And we call that the winter solstice, where there is the least amount of sun. So after the winter solstice, the sun will rise a little higher every day. So its arc goes a little higher every day. Then on March 21st is what we call the spring equinox. The sun rises much higher in the sky than it did in December. So the sun continues to rise higher and higher, appearing to make these longer and longer arcs in the sky until the summer solstice on June 21st. So on June 21st, the sun is at its highest arc. You will see that the sun appears to travel the highest through the sky and make the highest arc through the sky. And so we have the longest day, the longest amount of sunlight, which is called the summer solstice. Then, after the summer solstice, the arcs begin to decrease and get shorter and shorter every day. Then, on September the 21st, which is the fall equinox, you will see that the sun's arc in the sky lines up exactly as it did on the spring equinox. So the fall equinox is equal to the spring equinox. So on September the 21st and March the 21st, the sun will reach the same height in the sky. Then, every day after the fall equinox, the arcs begin to decrease and get shorter and shorter every day until it reaches its lowest point on the winter solstice, December the 21st. And on that day, we will have the shortest amount of daylight, and that is called the winter solstice. So the solstices are opposite. The winter solstice has the shortest day, while the summer solstice has the longest day. And the equinoxes are equal. We get the same amount of daylight on those days. So this was studied by early man. They would notice that the sun appeared to change positions in the sky as the year went on. So they really could not understand why that was. So early man could not really understand the nature of the sun. For a long time, people thought that the sun revolved around the earth. So it took a lot of intellectual people to figure out that not only does the earth revolve around the sun, but the reason for the seasons of the year is because the earth is tilted. So that took a lot of intelligence and a lot of science from a lot of good people who were the enemies of these large organized religions, from these pagan religions, through Judaism, through Roman Catholicism. All the priests and rabbis from these organized religions, they hated science, they hated intellects, they hated scientists, they hated philosophers, they hated thinkers, they hated the intellects. So this knowledge that is held by the Illuminati, they did not come up with this. They attacked those that would come up with this, and they kept it hidden from the public. This study about how the sun would rise to different heights in the sky during the year was developed by the world's intellects and scientists. And these are the people that are attacked and kept down by these organized religions. These priests and rabbis would always systematically attack those that would come up with this information, and whatever they had discovered or were working on, the religious cult would always steal and then hide. And still today, you may say that it's just regular science now. This information is readily available to everybody. But the truth is that these idiots, these dimwits that are in these large organized religions and in these militaries, who now control all the large universities and the libraries and YouTube and all these websites on the internet, they are doing the exact same thing to confuse and hide this knowledge. When you try to look this up on the internet, you will find that the people explaining this stuff are having a difficult time explaining it. It is not readily taught, or taught in a way that most people can understand. It is very confusing at best. The only thing they do now is lie about space concerning what the universities and NASA and different space programs begin to understand. The military and these organized religions that control all these universities and all these governments and all these websites on the internet, the only thing they do now is lie. They make up a bunch of lies about going to the moon or sending dune buggies to Mars. That is the only thing they do now, is they lie and they confuse all these subjects. So they are doing the exact same thing as what they did in the past. They have done this all through history, is that they keep this information locked away. If somebody discovers something new, these religious groups and these militaries will consider them something to attack, somebody to kill, and then they take their work and they classify it or they hide it. And then they have these idiots like Santos Bonacci and Jordan Maxwell get up and do discussions on astro-theology and make it even more confusing. So I'm going to finish up discussing astro-theology so that you stop taking people like Santos Bonacci seriously and Jordan Maxwell seriously when they are discussing astro-theology, and you can start seeing through what they are saying. So these are the signs of the zodiac, and I got this out of an old dictionary that was printed in the 1960s. So as you can see, they have Gemini and Cancer on top. That's May and June on the top. And then at the bottom, they have Sagittarius and Capricorn. So they have the winter on the bottom. Then, this is called a solar calendar. And it explains the cycles of the sun during the course of 1 year, which have the winter and summer solstice and the spring and fall equinox diagrammed. It is opposite to their chart of the zodiac. So right from the start, it becomes complicated to see the whole picture because one is opposite of the other. So if you turn the zodiac upside down so that the winter signs are on top and the summer signs are on the bottom, then you can easily line that up with the solar calendar. So this will help a lot of people when they go to analyze what they are being told concerning astro-theology. This makes it a lot easier to understand. Then, when you add these 4 pagan holidays, they are called Sabbats. These are witches' Sabbath days. You will have what the Wiccans call the Wheel of the Year. So the Wiccans, or the pagan religions, have 8 major holidays. And those are the winter solstice, Imbolc, the spring equinox, Beltane, the summer solstice, Lammas, the fall equinox, and Samhain. And they called that the Wheel of the Year, the Wiccan Sabbats, or pagan Sabbath days. These are the days that they practice ritual sacrifice on. So if you were somebody that analyzed the sky and started to note down how the sun appeared to change positions in the sky as the year went on, and maybe you even developed an instrument to help you read this, the smart little pagans and religious lunatics would all conspire together to go jump you, take your book, take your invention, go hide it in a cave somewhere, and then sacrifice you on the next pagan holiday. So this is what we call the Illuminati. These are the illuminated ones. These are your international gang of priests and rabbis. These are your freemasons. This is your military intelligence community. If you're some farmer somewhere and you begin to notice that the sun appears to change positions in the sky as the year goes on. And maybe you even develop some sort of instrument to help you measure that. Your local military cult, your local religious cult, your local secret society will all conspire to jump you, steal your notes, and whatever you were working on, go hide it in a cave somewhere, and then sacrifice you on the next major holiday. That is what you call your Illuminati. That is what is in control of these large religions, which are nothing more than religious cults. And this is what they are into. The Illuminati, the secret societies, they are not into secretly enlightening mankind, secretly aiding the human race's development. They're into destroying anybody intelligent. They're into destroying any scientist or thinker, stealing their work and hiding it from the world, sending forth their fake teachers who are all raving psychotics to confuse and bore the rest of you, so that the majority of the people cannot get into science because they cannot understand what these idiots are explaining. So it was a big joke trying to look into this recently. It took a lot of time just to figure out some of this. Once again, there was little information on these subjects, and the way it was presented by your establishment, by these teachers, by these universities, by the internet, was designed to confuse you almost on purpose. They couldn't do a better job screwing this up if they tried. That, and I think that a huge amount of these people are just idiots. That is who is left over after everybody else has been placed under attack by the militaries and the secret societies on this planet. If you are a halfway decent teacher and you are a pretty intelligent person, there's a good chance that this network of military secret society psychos have plotted to silence you, keep you down, or attack and kill you. So we're left with a bunch of confused, psychotic morons doing their best to confuse everything and lie to everybody. So apparently, for the first time that I can see, I've lined up their solar calendar with the 12 signs of the Zodiac. So what is funny is when I was looking up the dates to the different signs of the Zodiac, I quickly saw that all the dates were different. There were 5 or 6 different websites on the internet, and all the dates were different. So you know how people ask, what's your sign? So I guess the answer these days is, I don't know. I thought they were a set date, but not anymore. What your sign is depends on what website you go to, or depends on what astrologist you may refer to. So I went to the local bookstore in Keene, New Hampshire, and I found 5 books on astrology, and they all had different dates too. These 3 people had the same dates, as in their dates matched with each other. Juliana McCarthy, Mecca Woods, and Rachel Stewart. Then Christopher Renstrom and Marion Williamson. They had different dates from each other and also from the first 3 writers. So you can take a look at some of the people in this field. In my opinion, most of them look like nuts too. So I finally settled on taking the dates from the Encyclopedia Britannica. Those are the zodiac dates on my chart here. So on a website called space.com, they said everybody's star sign has changed. If you analyze the night sky to see what sign that we are under, they have changed over the centuries, and they are quite different than what has been used traditionally. But the dates on this chart are the dates that have been used traditionally for quite a few decades now. So I find it kind of funny to see all this confusion with astrology. It used to kind of be a big practice. I guess in the 80s and 90s, they would have a section of the newspaper called horoscopes, and everybody would see what it said under their sign, and it was kind of like getting your fortune read. So I guess that practice is not so popular today, and we have idiot control now at the head of astrology, and they cannot even agree on the specific dates. So astrology was never known as a science. It was kind of a hippie thing for a while. So that is what should be taken into consideration if you hear reports about how all the greatest minds of the world, like the Illuminati and all the heads of all these old religions, are all really into astro-theology. They will try to convince you that that is the big secret in the Illuminati, when the truth is they do not even know what sign of the zodiac people are born under anymore. So I wouldn't take them so serious when they try to convince you about their astro-theology. I would disregard all of it besides what is scientific, because that is really what they are trying to obscure and confuse, because that is what we have in control of our planet still today, are these giant primitive religions, these barbaric militaries, and their legions of idiot freemasons. So my voice has been strained today, but there's one more thing that I want to bring up, which is called the precession of the equinoxes. And once again, it sounds very impressive. So according to the Zeitgeist film of 2007, we are currently in the age of Pisces. So from 1 AD to the year 2150, we will be in the age of Pisces. So according to the Zeitgeist film, the age of Aquarius is not going to be into the year 2150. So I did a search on Google, and according to Ask Google, scientists do not know when the age of Aquarius will begin, and it's hard to tell. So Google does not even know. They don't have the faintest idea when the age of Aquarius will begin. And then according to researchers who are into astro-theology, like Santos Bonacci, the age of Aquarius began in 2012. Again, everybody has heard of the different ages or the precession of the equinoxes. And what that means is what star sign lines up with the equinoxes. Here, I'll do a search for it right now to see if I have a better answer here. So I just did a search on the internet. So this is from a Wikipedia article called Axial Precession. The precession of the equinoxes states every 2,160 years, the fall equinox will move from one constellation of the zodiac to the next. The planet's precession was historically called the precession of the equinoxes because the equinoxes moved westward along the ecliptic relative to the fixed stars, opposite to the yearly motion of the sun along the ecliptic. So once again, nobody has taken the time to try to put this into simple terms. Nobody has tried to simplify this information to attempt to explain to people. There should be a clear answer in a paragraph that can explain it easy. But once again, they have a scientific explanation for what this is. And their answer to that is that they don't know what age we are even in. So I really do not want to bother reading the pages and pages of their scientific mumbo jumbo if their conclusion is that they don't even know what age we are even in. So apparently, in the most simple terms that I could come up with, you will see a sign of the zodiac in a certain position of the night sky every 2,150 years. And then that changes to another star sign. So let's finish up with a couple of last points about astro-theology. Now using our new solar calendar with the zodiac combined to help decipher exactly what they are saying. So Jordan Maxwell is quoted as saying, when the sun dies in winter, on the winter solstice, December the 21st, and is reborn on December the 25th, the sun begins to move northward in the sky. And that is symbolized with the story in the Bible of Jesus dying on the cross and then was resurrected on December 25th on Christmas. So Jordan Maxwell will explain that on the 21st, which is the winter solstice, the sun is at its lowest point in the sky. And then he says, for the next 3 days, it does not change its position in the sky. So anything that is not moving must have been dead. So that is why they say Jesus Christ was crucified, died, and then was in his tomb for 3 days. And then he is resurrected on Christmas. So this is something that Jordan Maxwell will tell us. So according to the Christian religion, Jesus Christ was born on December the 25th. That was when he was born. He didn't die and then was resurrected on December 25th. Jesus Christ was born on December the 25th and he was crucified in the spring. He was crucified around April on a day that is called Good Friday for some reason. For some reason, the Roman Catholics call the day that Jesus Christ was crucified Good Friday. So this year is 2021, and Good Friday was on April 2nd. And 2 days later was Easter on April the 4th. So Easter is the day that Jesus Christ is said to have been resurrected from the dead. So I do not understand why Jordan Maxwell and other people who are into astro-theology are claiming that the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ lines up with the winter solstice. It just doesn't make any sense. So if they actually had a point to make about some of this, I would give them a little more credit. But basically, none of what they are saying makes any sense. So scientifically, on the winter solstice, December the 21st, the sun rises and arcs through the sky at its lowest point and then sets. So that is why they say the sun is supposed to have died on the winter solstice, because it is at its lowest point in the sky. Then every day after that, it gets higher and higher with its arcs through the sky. It stays in the sky a little bit longer every day. So we get a little longer daylight every day. And that goes all the way to the summer solstice on June 21st. And on that day, the sun is at its highest point in the sky. It makes its highest arc through the sky. And so we have the longest amount of daylight on that day. And then after the summer solstice, the sun begins to go back down a little lower every day, back into the winter solstice. So that is the scientific explanation of that. Any of these religious stories that talk about things dying or being reborn is just confusing. You don't need a parable to explain the obvious. It is so simple scientifically. All you need is a diagram. You don't need a parable to explain that. So when they come up with these stories about people or things dying and then being reborn, it's just stupid. Alright, the next subject is the Astro-theologists' view on the Jewish holiday called Passover. And once again, most of this information comes from Jordan Maxwell. So the Jewish holiday, Passover, was celebrated on March the 27th this year, which is 2021. I guess there is a Passover week. I guess Passover lasts for 7 or 8 days, and it kind of changes from year to year. So Jordan Maxwell will tell you that the real reason the holiday is called Passover is because around that time, the sun is passing over the equator and coming back up to the northern hemisphere. So that is why they call it Passover, because the sun is passing over the equator around that time of the spring equinox. So in 2021, we have the spring equinox on March the 21st. We have Passover on March the 27th through April the 4th. We have Good Friday on April the 2nd. And we have Easter on April the 4th. So all of that is happening around the same time, around the spring equinox. So if you look up Passover in the dictionary, I looked it up in the Standard Desk Dictionary of 1966, and it said Passover is celebrated when Jehovah passed over the houses of Jewish children and instead only killed the firstborn children of the Egyptians. So according to most sources, the holiday called Passover has to do with a vengeful God that passes over the Jewish houses and instead only kills the firstborn of the Egyptians. So it's kind of interesting that they crucified Jesus Christ right around Passover. So if you read the Old Testament, the book of Exodus, chapters 12 and 13, it says that the Lord told Moses to tell all of his followers to kill a lamb, which is a baby sheep, and then smear that lamb's blood on their doors. And that would be a sign for Jehovah to pass over their houses, to spare their houses, and instead only kill the firstborn of all the Egyptians in that area. And that was called the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover. For he passed over the houses of the people of Israel who were in Egypt at that time. So the next day, the Pharaoh wakes up, and there are reports of all the firstborn of every house being dead. So the Pharaoh contacted Moses and said, take the herds of cattle, take the flocks of sheep, and take your people and leave Egypt. And in chapter 12, verse 35, it says that the Egyptians gave the people of Israel all that they wanted, including jewelry, gold, and clothing. So about 600,000 people left Egypt with the money, with the cattle, and the herds. So they left Egypt and went into the wilderness. And the exact quote from the Bible is that there was a place called the wilderness of sin. So according to most, if not every source, that is why they call that Jewish holiday Passover, and not because the sun passes over the equator around the spring equinox. Last, for everybody's information, I want to let you know that there are two zodiacs. The one I've been discussing in this whole report is the one that is more commonly used. It's the one that is always used, as far as I know, and it is called the tropical zodiac. But there is another one that is called the sidereal zodiac. So I looked at the sidereal zodiac when I first started this because I wanted to see if these astro-theologists would make any more sense if their stories were compared to the sidereal zodiac. And that did not make much of a difference at all. So the sidereal zodiac has the same problems as the tropical zodiac, in that there are many different dates of the sidereal zodiac, depending on what website you look at, depending on what sidereal zodiac chart you are looking at. They are all different on the sidereal zodiac too. So apparently, the sidereal zodiac is based on a Hindu astrology, and they use something called Ayanamsas, and this accounts for the precession of the equinoxes. So they had a Wikipedia page on this, and it is pretty short, and it seems like just another level of confusion by the religious military establishment, this time hanging off of some ancient Hindu system. So the reason I bring this up is to make you aware that there are two zodiacs, because I do not want these people to say this whole time we are basing everything off the sidereal zodiac. Nobody uses the tropical zodiac anymore. So the sidereal zodiac is the more scientific and superior zodiac. I started this report around March, and now it is May, and during that time I have seen Wikipedia and Google change their information on the internet a dozen times. At first it started off as just downright disinformation, and through the subsequent months it was changed to include slightly more coherent information. So the only way to keep their information even slightly correct and clear is to keep on exposing them when they are lying and playing a bunch of idiotic games on the internet. Because again, a bunch of imbeciles have taken over the internet and the establishment, and that is what imbeciles do. They think it's funny that they could change the internet at will. So I've observed them giving out disinformation that I see through, and I try to upload more clear and researched information. And as soon as I do that, I'll go back on the internet and do a similar search, and then all this information comes up that is a little bit more clear. So the establishment likes to play this game, and the only way to keep them a little bit more coherent is to catch them in the act and record and document their blatant disinformation. I have observed Jordan Maxwell and Santos Bonacci doing the same thing. They are changing their videos. They are taking down all of their lectures from many years ago. They are changing the content, and they are re-uploading these new lectures. And it seems that they have YouTube support, because YouTube is marking these videos 6, 8, or 10 years old. Those are not the same lectures that I heard 6, 8, or 10 years ago. They are changing it all. They are updating their information, and with YouTube assistance, so they will not look like blatant disinformationists. And that will continue as these frauds try to hang in there with the real people. So that is one of their tactics, to give you disinformation and then change that when it suits them. So let's go over one of the last stories these astro-theologists will tell you that is designed to grab your attention, and it has to do with the kiss of death. So Jordan Maxwell says that the reason Judas kissed Jesus Christ to identify and betray him is also just a symbol of astrology. So all Judas is in the New Testament is a symbol for the star sign of Scorpio. So Jordan Maxwell says that when a scorpion stings you, the mark that it leaves looks like two lips. So going back into ancient times, Jordan Maxwell says that when a scorpion stings you, all the people from the Middle East would say, "You got the kiss of death." So I looked up scorpion stings on the internet, and I do not see any reference to a scorpion sting resembling two lips or being referred to as the kiss of death. So that information seems to be original from Jordan Maxwell. So he goes on to explain that Judas is the star sign of Scorpio. So when Judas or Scorpio gives Jesus Christ the kiss of death, what that means is that Scorpio is delivering the sun to his death on the winter solstice. So as you can see, according to the Zodiac, the tropical Zodiac, the star sign of Scorpio goes from October the 24th to November the 21st. And then after that is the star sign of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is the star sign that contains the winter solstice. The winter solstice happens on the last day of Sagittarius, the Archer. So again, that does very little to prove the astro-theologist view that all this stuff happening in the Bible are just metaphors for astrology and the solar calendar. And according to the sidereal zodiac, the sign of Scorpio is from November the 16th to December the 15th. So it would make a lot more sense if the sign of Scorpio contained the winter solstice, because the scorpion would bite the sun and then the sun would die. But that is not the case. Sagittarius, the star sign of Sagittarius, contains the winter solstice. So when you listen to these astro-theologists, what they say sometimes sounds impressive, but if you closely look at what they are saying, you'll realize none of it lines up and none of it makes any sense. So Santos Bonacci is an occult researcher, and he's very much like Jordan Maxwell. He claims to expose high-level corruption, and he gives insane legal advice under the topics of common law and sovereign rights. He also talks about something called maritime admiralty laws, and all of this advice is designed to get you arrested or in trouble at court. You don't want to listen to anybody who talks about common law or sovereign rights or maritime admiralty law. Santos Bonacci also discusses astro-theology, and he has dozens, if not hundreds, of confusing lectures on the internet, some of which mix astrology with human anatomy. So it is just more crazy stuff from Santos. Santos Bonacci has an interview with a rap artist called Killah Priest, who was affiliated with the Wu-Tang Clan, and the video is called Killah Priest Podcast number 17, and it was uploaded onto YouTube on March the 1st of 2020. And in that video, Santos Bonacci describes murdering somebody. Santos Bonacci describes killing somebody. And he says that on October the 13th of last year, so I guess that was probably around 2019, and he says that he was staying at his girlfriend's house, and her ex-boyfriend shows up and attacks his girlfriend. So Santos Bonacci runs into the room to defend his girlfriend, and moments later, the ex-boyfriend is dead by his own baseball bat and knife. Then, Santos Bonacci says that at that time, he was experiencing his own breakup, a breakup of his own relationship. So that implies that he wasn't going out with this girlfriend of his for very long. So she probably broke up with her ex-boyfriend recently, who was probably jealous of Santos Bonacci staying there with her. So later in that interview, Santos Bonacci is quoted as saying, I quote, "The sister I was staying with was named Molly." So it's strange that he refers to his girlfriend as the sister I was staying with, and that implies that she was a sister of a sorority, like the Eastern Stars of Freemasonry, because that is what secret society members refer to themselves as, brothers and sisters of different fraternities and sororities. So all of this suggests that this was something of a setup to get a man jealous who would then go to his girlfriend's house. It could have been even his house that he was recently kicked out of. So they had a setup. He shows up to confront the new boyfriend, or possibly he just enters his own house to get some of his personal belongings. And inside is 1, his girlfriend, 2, Santos Bonacci, and 3, anybody else that Santos Bonacci wants inside of there. So this all just might be a setup to get the guy to show up there, where they could all attack and then kill this man, and then say that he was there in a jealous fit of rage, and they had to kill him in self-defense. So I believe that this type of thing happens all the time. So this is why I tell you, these secret societies are no good. They utilize methods such as this to arrange situations where they can attack and kill people who are then blamed for the whole situation. So it is extremely sad what they do to regular good people, using basically mind control tactics, causing good people to make the wrong decisions, and then place themselves into dangerous situations where they are then attacked and killed by these military Freemasons. So I will play the clip from that video from the Killah Priest podcast, episode number 17.
On the 13th of October, I had a murder attempt. A guy came to kill me and the woman I was staying with, and he ended up 10 minutes later dead by his own baseball bat and knife.
Wow.
Mars does not like Libra, and I was saying for a long time, watch out, everyone.
Yeah.
Because Mars in Libra, the 7th sign, the 7th house of partnerships, is going to be ruining partnerships everywhere. And at the time, I was experiencing my own breakup of my, I was in a relationship, and Mars was just the finishing touches of the dissolution of that. My transits were just incredible. The moon, full moon in Aries, was in the 8th house, the house of death. The sisters I was staying with, Molly, her name is, she was also Aryan, Her transits were just incredible. That Mars in Libra was directly opposite the moon, the full moon in Aries, directly opposite. And it was a gentleman, or we shouldn't say a gentleman, a man that she knew that she had a relationship many years ago, and who was obsessed with her and wouldn't leave her and was texting her and telling her that he was going to murder both of us.
Is it okay to talk about this on live?
Yeah, why not?
He's dead. He's dead.
Been talking about it already.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, for sure.
He's dead. I just He can't say that.
No, brother, I'm very, very comfortable talking about this. Why? Because I was delivered by the angels, and syncretism, I was spared for syncretism. Now, I am absolutely, fully devoted, like never before, to syncretism, and so is she. And she saw angels for 3 weeks. For 3 weeks, she's still suffering with massive head injuries, and she has pressure. She's going every day. Molly, I am absolutely, fully devoted, like never before, to syncretism, and so is she. And she saw angels for 3 weeks. For 3 weeks, she's still suffering with massive head injuries, and she has pressure. She's going every day. Molly, yeah.
The guy hit her.
Oh man, he started swinging. I had to run into that room with bare hands to stop him murdering her. And what happened was he ended up dead.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He pulled out a knife on me.
Oh wow.
Yeah. For sure.
Now, when we talk angels, are we talking about metaphorically the angels are watching over us with the angles of the planet?
Both.
So there is very little information that I could find on Santos Bonacci on the internet. He has a website called the Universal Truth School, but it says very little about his past. On the Killer Priest podcast, however, Santos Bonacci says that as a boy, he was very into reading the Bible. He says that he was always theological from a young boy and grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. He says that as a teenager, he left the Jehovah's Witnesses and did the worldly thing. He grew his hair, smoked the pot, and did that for about 10 years. Then he thought that he wanted to serve God. So he went back to the Jehovah's Witnesses for a couple of more decades. And at that point, he read many different books that opened his mind. So according to Santos Bonacci, as a child, he was interested in reading the Bible and was part of the Jehovah's Witness religion for 2 or 3 decades before deciding to rebel against all of that to preach about government and religious conspiracies. So that doesn't sound right. That description does not sound like somebody who would be a typical activist who, when describing their childhood, says, I like to read the Bible, smoke pot, and being part of the Jehovah's Witness religion for 20 or 30 years. That description suggests somebody who seems to be really out of touch with the times. That sounds like something a Quaker or a Puritan will tell you in the 1600s. As a boy, I like to read the Bible and like going to my church. That doesn't sound like a typical political activist or some sort of rebel who is here to criticize religion or the government. So I looked up the Jehovah's Witness religion, and it is something of a strict religious organization who believes in something called Adventism. So in Adventism, all of humankind is considered to have inherited sin as the result of Adam's sin in the Garden of Eden. In this view, God's law requires that only the sacrificial death of a perfect human being can atone for Adam's sin. That is the only way to atone for sin and escape death. Jehovah's Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists are among the groups that hold this view. So what that means is because of Adam's sin, who was supposedly the first man ever created by God, we are all considered guilty and sinful people by the God Jehovah. And the only thing that we can do to redeem ourselves for this sin is to help Jehovah kill perfect human beings or people that do not sin. So if you think that makes any sense whatsoever, you just might be a mind-controlled religious cult nut. Because one guy sinned a long, long time ago, you were all guilty of sin. And the only way to please God is to kill people who don't sin. So the people that try to normalize this view are completely psychotic and are into human sacrifice. They want any excuse whatsoever to kill good guys. So that is exactly what happened in the New Testament concerning the Jews and the Romans attacking and killing Jesus Christ for healing and teaching people. So in the Jehovah Witness religion, an emphasis, of course, is placed on the God Jehovah and less on Jesus Christ. So I remember talking to my neighbor who was a strict Jehovah Witness, and he saw me outside in our condo's parking lot one day, and he wanted to come over and preach the good word of the Jehovah Witnesses to me. And his major point was this. He asked me, do you know how many times the name of God as Jehovah is written in the Bible? And I said, no, I don't. And I think he said something like 180 or 200 times. And then he sat there looking at me. And I said, yeah, okay. And he says, you know what that means? And I said, no. And he says, Jehovah is the real name of God. And so that was his major point on that day. That was his introduction to his Jehovah Witness religion. So the Jehovah Witnesses obviously love Jehovah and the Old Testament, and probably less the New Testament, which describes the ritual sacrifice of a perfect human being to please this God Jehovah. So like I said earlier in this report, if you want to read the Old Testament, you could get an idea of the type of people that were into worshiping Jehovah and the God of the Old Testament. So Jehovah is very little like Jesus Christ. In fact, I would say the teachings of Jehovah are almost opposite of the teachings of Jesus Christ. So when Santos Bonacci is asked about his childhood, and some of the only things that he mentions is that he liked to read the Bible and go to church at the Jehovah Witnesses, that sounds to me like Santos Bonacci is somebody who is heavily controlled by religion. So I would be extremely suspicious when somebody like that wants to turn around and claim to investigate and expose that. Something about that does not sound right. So he is obviously an inside guy who was elected by these religious groups to be a fake critic of these religions. Let's promote Brother Bonacci to expose us. That's a great idea, and what a laugh that will be. So if you were to ever ask me about my childhood, I could tell you a lot of stories. So many, in fact, that I have a book written for young adults, written for young people, and it's a comedy called Leech Mob, a novel about a Connecticut gang. And if you want to support what I do, you could buy a copy of that book, and I promise that will be the funniest book that any of you have ever read. And it will help me continue with my work on exposing these fakes that have taken over almost the entire truth movement. And I could then bring you some more real information. But concerning my religious history, my parents brought me to a Presbyterian church when I was in elementary school. And from the 1st through 6th grade, I went to a Catholic school So I was raised both Protestant and Catholic. My mother was a Catholic and my dad was a Protestant, but neither of them seemed to be really into church. We used to go every Sunday for a couple of years, but when I got to be a teenager, we stopped going to church on Sunday and instead only went on Easter and Christmas. So next, I originally thought that Santos Bonacci was something like an Australian or even an English Freemason, but now I think that he's actually an American actor named Joaquin Phoenix. And I think that he's best known for his role in the movie Gladiator, where he played the evil emperor. So just like Santos Bonacci, Joaquin Phoenix is just another made-up name because these guys do not want you to know what their real name is. So I think Joaquin, and it's spelled J-O-A, I think that is a play on the Freemasonic pillars. I guess they are on the Temple of Solomon, and they are a Freemasonic symbol. And the pillars are called Jachin and Boaz. So on this video entitled Killer Priest Podcast number 17, it stands out that Santos Bonacci is really Joaquin Phoenix. On other videos, Santos Bonacci may look a little different, and that is because very often when the military religious establishment invents a character like Santos Bonacci, they often get 2 or 3 different actors to play that role. So this character, known as Santos Bonacci, is actually probably 2 or 3 different men who all act as Santos Bonacci. It's a character that they all know how to play, and they could get done up with sophisticated makeup to all look like this Santos Bonacci character. So this is not unique to Santos Bonacci. They do this all the time because they have millions of people at their disposal. Every single person in the military can be trained for different roles in the public eye. So the government, the media, and the military are just a bunch of actors now, especially as their goal has been to infiltrate every aspect of American society. All they need is a bunch of actors now that look good to the public. So they will hire 2 or 3 different actors. They will train 2 or 3 different actors to all know how to play one role. And they've done this, for example, with the guy known as Alex Jones. They have 2 or 3 or 4 different men that all act as Alex Jones. They have also done this with President Trump and with President Biden. Those guys need some time off. Those guys need sick days and holidays. We just can't get one guy to act as Alex Jones or President Trump or President Biden. So we'll get 2 or 3 different men who all know how to act like those people. So it's one big charade in the U.S. government now concerning politics, the media, and the military. That's all these military people are a bunch of actors. All right, the next topic concerning Santos Bonacci is that much like Jordan Maxwell, it should not be a surprise to learn that Santos Bonacci, also known as Joaquin Phoenix, is just another military-controlled Freemason involved in stalking and harassing individuals like myself. Around November of 2014, I was going door to door in Brookfield, Connecticut. I was handing out flyers to advertise my book, Leech Mob, a novel about a Connecticut gang. And I was on a road off of Long Meadow Hill Road in Brookfield. That's right by the high school. It was most likely Cove Road or Hop Brook Road. And Santos Bonacci, also known as Joaquin Phoenix, was in one of those houses whose door I knocked on. And he came to the door and he took a flyer. So that was the first time I had seen him. And at that time, obviously, I did not know who he was. He looked very calm and he spoke in an American accent. He spoke like a regular American and he said, "Thank you. I will look into it," as he took a flyer. So about a month later, around December of 2014, I saw Santos Bonacci recommended on YouTube, and he was giving lectures on astrology and common law. For a few months there, every time I turned on YouTube, I would see Santos Bonacci being highly recommended by YouTube. He was always the video that YouTube suggested that you watch next. So at that time, I believe that he called himself something like Bernardos Bonacci. It wasn't Santos. And when I saw him on YouTube, I recognized him as the same guy who took a flyer from me in Brookfield about a month earlier. So I did not find his lectures too interesting, partly because he was difficult to understand, yet I recognized him as the man who took a flyer from me in Brookfield about a month before. So at that time, I thought that his meeting me, his coming to the door in a neighborhood where I was handing out flyers, had been arranged through the Freemasons, because Santos Bonacci wanted to meet a member of the American public who was a writer, a researcher, and a documentary filmmaker that he saw on YouTube. So for 2 years, at that point, the military and the Freemasons have been going out of their way to show me that I had not only been noticed by them, but was being spied on and harassed by members of these organizations. So very often, these organizations will make some of these games or these strange interactions appear to be non-threatening or innocent. And that is often called street theater on the internet. It's called gang stalking if it's aimed to harass you or provoke you or get you in trouble. And it is called street theater when their aim is to appear non-threatening or innocent. And the reason that they do this is it is part of their mind control. It is part of their good cop, bad cop routine. Our objectives are not all the same in the military. We're not all alike in the Freemasons. Some of us like you and want to help you, while there are gangs of bad Freemasons or bad projects in the military. But we're not all like that. So this is all aimed to confuse you, because of course they all play for the same team. Just some will play the role of the good cop, while others will play the role of the bad cop. This is the oldest game in the book. So at that time, I really did not understand that as well as I do today, some 6 years later in 2021. So at that time, in 2014, that is what I thought this Santos Bonacci meeting was. Just something innocent arranged by the military to allow certain individuals in the Freemasons the privilege of meeting those that have caught their eye. At that time, what this suggested to me was that people like Santos Bonacci were members of the military or the Freemasons who had gained an interest in my progress so far. These were men that also had YouTube channels where they were considered researchers and activists. So it was like an unspoken message that these are the type of men that respect what you're doing. They like you as a person. And probably as you continue to progress and continue to do what you're doing, maybe one day you will have a website just like Jordan Maxwell or Alex Jones or Michael Tessarian or Santos Bonacci, a well-known YouTube channel. And ultimately, this is the faction within the Freemasons and within the military that will go on to support you. The militants may hate you, but the intelligentsia, the great thinkers of their orders, actually respect you and will do what they can to help you. Nothing is further from the truth. These guys are the worst. Any of these Freemasons, any of these figures that are involved in MK Ultra or stalking programs, the reason that they are doing this is for criminal purposes. They should all be charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and murder. If I wanted to meet somebody, I would try to write them a letter, try to contact them on YouTube, go to their radio show and introduce myself and hand them my business card or my flyer. I wouldn't find a way to spy on them and follow them around and play some weird game with them. These are the actions of the predators that are stalking activists for criminal purposes. So don't fall for this game. All these guys work on the same team to bring the rest of you down. That is what these secret societies, that is what these military and religious orders are all about. So go ahead and listen to a few minutes worth of Santos Bonacci if you want to hear a raving lunatic that will not make sense to anybody about his take on government or religious conspiracies. Anybody normal will listen to that guy for about a minute before turning it off. Santos Bonacci is just another one of those activists, those anti-government nuts. If this is what these guys are like, I'm not going to take any of them serious. So that is their objective and that is their aim. So their aim is to keep the rest of you down, who take research serious and have intelligent information for everyone else. Every person involved in military and Freemason stalking programs do this to ultimately destroy the person they are stalking. They will steal whatever their victims have and whatever their victims have been working on. And then these Freemasons will pass parts of their work off as their own. They will take from you and then present it. They will present parts of it as their own work and research. So you do all the work. Then they steal that from you and present it to the public eye so that they appear credible. Left to their own, these men are just actors that sound psychotic 90% of the time. But if they start to make sense, even a little bit, that is the information that they have stolen from real activists and real researchers and then pass off as their own. So Santos Bonacci, also known as Joaquin Phoenix, wasn't there to meet an underground, up-and-coming writer, as I had thought. That sick, elitist, multi-millionaire is probably there to fulfill his sick fantasies by destroying another regular guy's life, much like he admitted to doing, attacking and killing some guy when he was there with the guy's ex-girlfriend. So regular people's lives just don't matter to these rich elitists like Santos Bonacci, also known as Joaquin Phoenix. So if you catch these guys stalking you, they are doing that for criminal reasons. So I saw Joaquin Phoenix, also known as Santos Bonacci, again in November of 2020. So at that time, I was now living in the state of New Hampshire. So the first time I saw him was in Brookfield, Connecticut in 2014. And now 6 years later, he's up around my hometown where I moved to, some 3 hours north. So this guy will follow me from state to state. So at that time, I had made plans with my ex-wife to take my daughter out for the day. And she says, why don't you meet me at the hospital? Because I have a doctor's appointment that I have to go into. So I will tell her to wait out in the car. And you can meet her there at the Keene Hospital parking lot. So I drove there. I saw her car. I found a parking space and I parked in that parking space and I started to walk toward my ex-wife's car. And I saw Santos Bonacci parked a few spaces down from where my ex-wife had parked. And he was wearing glasses and he was looking down like it's something on his lap, like he was reading something. And he was parked a short ways away from where my daughter was waiting in my ex-wife's car. So he put the car into reverse and then he drove away. So it became obvious that Santos Bonacci, also known as Joaquin Phoenix, had some sort of military clearance to follow my ex-wife and daughter around. So I consider this a very threatening maneuver and exposes just what the military is doing with their giant budget. They aren't protecting us from the Russians or protecting us from the Chinese. They're taking your tax money and then giving it to multi-millionaire scumbags so they can follow your wife and daughter around for what is believed to be criminal reasons. So the last point that I want to make in this segment is to describe how YouTube seems to be involved in all of this too. There's been a merger between politics, the military, and the media. That's why they're all actors now. And YouTube is one of the largest and most popular video hosting websites on the internet. So first, if you begin to watch some of the videos put out by Santos Bonacci, you'll begin to wonder why anybody at YouTube will want to promote his channel. He is a raving idiot. Almost none of what he says makes any sense. Second, in 2014, when I first saw him, he called himself Bernardos Bonacci. So in 2014, he is recommended by YouTube and has several dozen videos, all called Bernardos Bonacci. And then a few years later, all his videos have been changed to the name Santos Bonacci. So I guess that he could have gone back and changed all the titles and descriptions and edited all the videos with the YouTube editor to systematically remove all references to his old name Bernardos. And he just may have lucked out that no one had ever downloaded and reposted one of his old videos and called him by his old name. So if he called himself Bernardos Bonacci and then decided to change his name, it's hard to imagine that that would systematically reflect all over YouTube and all over the internet. So it just may be that corporate YouTube helped Santos Bonacci restructure his YouTube page and the entire internet for that matter. Because of April of 2021, I did a search for Bernardos Bonacci or Bernard Bonacci and nothing came up that had anything to do with him. Another weird thing was that in 2014, Bernardos or Santos Bonacci had a video featuring his arrest. A group of cops came to his door, I guess at his residence, and he was there with a heavy Native American or Hispanic female. And the whole time she was seated on the couch. So Santos Bonacci begins to argue with the cops, and Santos Bonacci falls on the floor, and he begins to struggle with the cops for 2 or 3 minutes, and the whole time he keeps on repeating, "Help, help, an illegal arrest is taking place. Help me, I do not consent to this arrest." And he keeps on repeating that over and over again as he struggles with the cops and they try to handcuff him. And this heavy Hispanic or Indian woman has this serious face the whole time this is happening. So after a while, I thought it was kind of funny that this idiot is yelling that he wants help because he does not consent to the police arresting him. So I remember it very clearly because it was almost funny. It looked like a staged event. It looked like BS. And then recently, in 2021, I did a search for Santos Bonacci on YouTube and Santos Bonacci arrest on YouTube. And there is only one video of Santos Bonacci being arrested. And again, it is at the same residence. But in this version, he is by himself. The heavy Hispanic or Indian woman is no longer in the scene. He argues with the cops a little bit, and then they quickly handcuff him, and they take him outside and put him in the police car. So it's a completely new version. So it seems that his whole channel has been reconstructed, including changing his original name, and even the content of his videos. And I have noticed the same thing has happened with Jordan Maxwell and Michael Tessarian. All of their original lectures have been re-edited. Michael Tessarian's main lecture, called The Origin of Evil, has been edited down to 1 hour and 50 minutes. The original version that I saw many years ago in 2008 was over 3 hours long. And all of Jordan Maxwell's main lectures have been edited too. So back around 2008, I must have watched all of these guys' main lectures 12 times each, mainly because they were all difficult to understand. So nobody was more familiar with these guys' main lectures than I. So when I looked up their lectures again recently in 2021, I could easily see that all of their lectures have been re-edited and redone. It sounds like they've done the audio over again. They use pieces of the original video, but they have redone all of the audio. They have redone everything that they have said. So Michael Tessarian and Jordan Maxwell reread all the parts, and then they re-edited it and made it look like their original lectures from many years ago. And I think YouTube had to help because these have the dates of 5, 10, and 15 years ago. But these are not the same lectures I heard in 2008. They have all been redone because all of these guys are frauds. All of these guys are actors. They are not activists. They are not researchers. Nothing that they do is real. It's all a job that they do for the military media establishment. You cannot get more fake than all the people that I'm going to name in this series. Absolutely nothing about them is real. So it would be an impossibility to systematically change all of those videos unless Jordan Maxwell, Santos Bonacci, and Michael Tessarian were affiliated with corporate YouTube. The old practice was you could download videos off of YouTube and then re-upload parts of that on your own YouTube channel. So YouTube apparently has systematically removed all of that to assist these professional actors as they do a job for the military and for the corporate media.